to have a brand new guest, someone I've kind of got to know here and there over the last few years, and that is Maureen Bannon. Maureen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Peter, for having me on.
Not at all. It was about time. You kind of connect with people and you think it's probably about time to have them on for an interview. So it is great to have you. Obviously, people can follow you on Twitter. Maureen_Bannon is your handle. And obviously, you're the CEO of WarRoom, Army veteran. And of course, you have a sideline of being Mr. Bannon's daughter. And people will know you. We've had lots of War and Posse on, lots. As I said, we've had Carly Boudet on and Noor Bin Laden this week. So it has been a War and Posse week. So it's always good fun to connect with those giving input into the program itself, into WarRoom, and sharing it to our half and half US UK audience here. But I want to talk about institutions being weaponized against us all. And I think the conversation is just as valid for you stateside as it is for us in the UK and across Europe. We've seen that in many different levels. But maybe we can ask you, you've fought for your country. Your background is in the military and you've gone to war for, I guess, American interests and to fight for American values. Maybe start there. Just tell us why you joined the military and what are your thoughts on the current state of the military?
So I joined the military. Like you said, I was in the Army. I graduated from West Point in 2006, and then I served almost 9 years on active duty. So I got out. My last day in the Army was May 1st of 2019. So I joined went to West Point, started back in 2006. And I knew growing up that I wanted to be in the military. My dad is a Navy vet. My uncle is a Navy vet. One of my older cousins is also a Navy vet. And actually on 9/11, I had two cousins living in New York City. So my mom woke me up on 9/11 and I was living in California. So we were 3 hours behind and she told me, a plane's hit the first tower. And then I was in the kitchen watching on our little black and white TV in the kitchen. And I saw the second plane hit the second tower. And it was kind of right then that I knew that an act of terrorism was going on. And I wanted to help my country. So the next day I told my parents, I'm like, I want to join the military. I was 12, 13.
What was the response?
Both parents were like, okay, that's admirable, but no one's going to believe that you're 17, 18 years old and can enlist in the military. Like, there's no way. Maybe 16, I could get a waiver, or 17 get a waiver, but not at 13. Like, there was no way that I was going to convince anyone that I was old enough to serve at that time. But in high school, I was like, okay, I still want to serve the military, but I want to go to a normal, like, 4-year civilian college. And actually, I was playing volleyball since the 4th grade, and my dad said, well, all these schools are recruiting you. Why don't you reach out to the service academies? You want to be in the military, you can still play volleyball and you can serve your country. I was like, well, I don't know, but I did. And I got recruited by all 3 major service academies and I fell in love. I went to Annapolis and the military academy, so West Point, to visit and meet with their coaches and meet the team. And I just knew, Annapolis is beautiful, the Naval Academy, but I knew as soon as I got onto post at West Point, take away volleyball, this is where I was meant to be. There was just something that was drawing me there. And I got my congressional nomination, and I knew, both parents said, if this isn't for you, you can always leave the academy if you want to. However, I'm that type of person, and both parents know, and they've raised me to be like, you don't quit something once you start it. So once I got to West Point, they knew that I wasn't going to leave. So yeah, that's kind of my long story journey to West Point. But I played volleyball all 4 years and then commissioned in 2010, August of 2010, um, because I needed some summer school. I focused a little more on volleyball than I did academics earlier in my college time. So I needed some summer school. So I had some training to make up, which is why I didn't graduate with a majority of my class in May of 2010. I was an August grad, but graduating at that time still, the things that I did in my Army career might not have happened, or those opportunities might not have happened had I graduated in May. So, everything happens for a reason, but I graduated in 2010. I was a logistics officer. I deployed to Iraq. So I was actually part of the withdrawal out of Iraq. So seeing the botched withdrawal in Afghanistan was extremely infuriating, because we saw, now it wasn't 100% successful in Iraq. However, we saw a right way
Hmm.
to do it. And then what the Biden regime did in Afghanistan um, was completely botched. And I think that that's where, while it wasn't a weaponization of the military, you saw a turn in the military occur under the Biden regime. It wasn't about doing things right. It was about doing things the opposite of how President Trump did it or had it set up to do. Um, we withdrew out of Iraq under President Obama. However, that plan was seen by President Trump. It wasn't 100% successful. We still have troops back in Iraq after we withdrew out of that, but the Biden regime was so focused on doing the opposite of what was done by the previous administration that they didn't care whose lives they put at risk. I mean, there's 13 service members, families that have to live with the pain and grief of this regime that shouldn't have to, and 28 plus service members that were injured at Abbey Gate. And then after that, you see the weaponization of the military. We're more focused on pronoun training, gender theory, than we are on war fighting. I mean, June 1st, you saw different branches of the military make posts about pride.
Yeah.
We should be focused on war fighting. I shouldn't see a Navy SEAL post with the rainbow flag covering it. Especially in the special operations community, you should be focused on war fighting, not, this woke agenda that the Biden regime is pushing. And so I got out in 2019. I've seen many great leaders that I respected when I was in get out since then. And leaders that were more focused on this woke agenda, even back, you know, uh, under the Trump administration, you could see it start to arise. Um, but it became very prevalent, under the Biden regime. In 2016, I was in company command in the military, actually, and which is, for all your viewers, it's basically you're in charge of a unit um, of soldiers. So I was a training company commander. So in the 16 months I was in command, I had 3,000 trainees come through my company during their time of training. And we had a briefing on if we had a transgender trainee what to do and how they would be treated. We're not focusing on, we're taking time out of our day to focus on that instead of how we're going to make sure they get the proper training to go to their unit to be successful.
Wow. Well, because at the moment we haven't seen a weaponization of the military as we have seen with the police, with the political system, with the legal system, with the media. I want to touch on that, but just want to ask you one other question because we've seen a massive disconnect in the UK with our military and those in charge. And we have always had simply in the royal family, we've always had where they served in the military. That's probably at an end now. We've seen many of our politicians traditionally would have had a connection to the military. That seems to have a massive disconnect. And I've certainly seen how damaging that has been, I think, on the national identity and how Britain projects itself whenever it doesn't have that connection with the military. I'm assuming it's a similar story over in the US.
I believe so. I think that, when politicians make decisions for the military, it's extremely hard to know how it's going to affect the military unless you've served. We do have a contingency of veterans in Congress, in the Senate. What the current administration, feckless Joe Biden had two technically two sons served, but one served, maybe 30 days before he was kicked out for drug-related charges.
That was
Um,
good. He did 30 days.
I would say that's being nice saying that he did 30 days, but he shouldn't have ever been in the military, in my opinion. However, Beau Biden, he did serve. I still think that Biden uses that to try and connect with people, but it's not. He doesn't understand,
Hmm.
and he's never really been in support of the military by his actions. Obama, you would think that if you're vice president and your president has never served and you have a son that served, you maybe would guide him
Hmm.
in ways to help the military. And Obama did not like the military, despite, I found out a couple days ago that President Obama will be receiving an award by my alma mater for, being a great advocate for the military. However, that is the furthest thing from the truth. He was not in support of the military. He actually tried to downsize the military while I was in. He was giving pink, or basically allowing pink slips to be given to the military to shrink the military size, which how are we going to be an effective military if we don't have enough personnel? So then under the Trump administration, we tried to grow the military again. And then under the Biden regime with COVID-19, trying to lower the number of personnel in the military. And that's why, many of the branches have not met their retention requirements or recruiting numbers, because no one wants to go into a woke military. And a lot of veterans see that this is not the military, this is not the army that I was in. And I got out in 19. This is not the Navy that my dad and my uncle served in. And it's really hard to tell your children, oh, I believe it's admirable to serve. I did. But under this regime, it's really hard to say that. But I do, it's, I'd love to see more veterans run for office and be able to help get things passed that would actually help, the military and veterans. And right now, that's not really the case.
Yeah, same in the UK. We have very few veterans actually run for political office, and that is a huge shame. I think they give a lot back to the country in a political capacity. But I mean, with the military, obviously you go, you're given an operation, you're given a mission, and you carry it out, and it's not whether you agree or disagree. And um, but then but that's abroad, and I don't think the American people really get a concept of that, and it doesn't really affect them. Whatever happens abroad is irrelevant. But I want to touch on the police, because that how the police have been used, and certainly during COVID, we've seen the police go in with batons raised and beating people because they had a cup of coffee within 2 meters of someone else, and now we have CCTV being used to film people, and then you've got that intrusion, and the police very much into that, using live facial recognition, even, which is being pushed without full legislation for that. But what is there a mistrust of the police in the US? How are they perceived? Tell us a little bit about that as people go through their daily lives, or is there still a respect of those individuals?
I believe there's still a respect for a majority of police. We always hear there's a few bad apples in every bunch. But it depends. You see police in different states that are well respected, and then in other states are not respected. Police in New Jersey were used by the governor to try, especially during COVID. There was a gym in New Jersey. The governor tried to mandate that every business, unless it was essential, which for some reason liquor stores and strip clubs were essential and gyms were not, but tried to this gym was supposed to be shut down, and they decided to stay open. Governor had the police arrest the gym owners for
Wow.
staying open. You know, there's police down. I live in the free state of Florida, and police here are very respected. They're like, we're not going to do this that violates someone's, fundamental right. So I honestly believe that the police are viewed differently depending on the state that you lived in, and it shouldn't be the case. I think that we should have a respect for the police, but I don't think that they should be used as a arm of the government, which in some states they are being used as, the minions for the left.
Well, tell us, you said you're in Florida, and of course we saw the raid on Mar-a-Lago, on President Trump, and that was conducted by police officers at whatever level, and you can maybe touch on some of that, but you kind of look at that and you think that seems to be extremely political. Yet you have the police officers playing a part in that. Maybe they don't have a choice, or they're not other crimes they can deal with. Is this the focus? And you kind of put yourself in their shoes, thinking, actually, you'd think, is this what I signed up for? To go in and possibly arrest a former president. I mean, how did you see that? And because that seems to be a line that has been crossed by the police.
100%, and that's what I saw it as, in a not just like a little your big toe or your little toe over the line. That was a huge crossing of the line in that raid at Mar-a-Lago, and the fact that the FBI had authority to use deadly force if necessary. And I actually got into an argument with a former FBI agent on Twitter about this, because they were trying to say that it is normal procedure for them in their operational orders to be granted the right to use deadly force if necessary.
That's scary.
The fact that in order to use deadly force if necessary, you have to feel, and I went back to look at this, to look up how it falls under the FBI, that in order to use deadly force, you must feel that your life is at risk. So Please tell me how a man in his 70s in his own residence is causing you any risk to your life. And the FBI agent didn't come back at me with an argument, but what I think that he probably would have said, well, Secret Service, we could have felt like we were at risk with the Secret Service there. However, it's the president's main residence. He he was not there, but if he was there, would he have been a threat to your life? I don't think so. There was no reason to have the authority to use deadly force. And the fact that, that has to go up the chain to get that, it just reeks of the Biden regime telling the DOJ and the FBI that there is authority to use deadly force if necessary. And why did you have all these plans in place if deadly force was used, if you didn't think that you were actually going to use it?
Oh, it's scary. And obviously, a police officer then could have carried that out, could have shot, and they would have been within their legal rights in theory. And that's frightening.
Yeah.
Wow, that is well. Can On to, of course, what the reason the FBI were allowed to go in is because the courts then authorize this, and you kind of begin to see, I guess, a whole jigsaw, a chain coming together and allowing different parts of the state to use means which maybe we wouldn't have initially or traditionally thought was acceptable. And of course, just days ago, we've seen the trial, President Trump's latest trial there in New York. And we had Carly Bonet giving her, only she can give her such thoughts on what had happened in a way that was difficult to keep to under an hour because it was so much fun on a topic which is so concerning. Only she could do that. But I mean, tell us about that, because that must strike fear into every American citizen when they see how that is used against a president. Therefore, an individual member of the public, a citizen, actually they have zero protection. Trump can actually use finances and can use publicity to push back. But I mean, tell us about your thoughts as you've seen the attack on Trump by the legal system.
It should, and I'm not saying this to strike fear in your audience, but it should make people fearful that if they can do it to Trump, they can do it to any normal citizen. The fact that he has said before, President Trump has said before, they're not coming for me, they're coming for you. I just happen to be in the way. And the fact that we saw the unconstitutional things that occurred during this trial is extremely alarming. And, until this regime, and it goes all the way up to the man occupying the White House right now, that things like this can continue to occur. And he has and I'm not a lawyer, but based on, what Mike Davis has said on the show and other lawyers that have come on, that there is grounds for appeal, but it's still, you still have to go through the process. And at the same time, knowing how corrupt the system has become, it's alarming on those steps to appeal, like what's going to occur. Because if you look at the appellate court, they don't look like the appellate court in New York, from what I've seen, don't look like, Trump fans. So the fact that it'll have to go up to the Supreme Court, but it should be alarming to everyone that if this can happen to him, it can happen to anyone.
And of course, what you face there is very different from the UK. I mean, explain a little bit to UK viewers how it really is a state by state. It's not the same system across the board. You do look at certain states and you've got an idea of how something may be more fair or less fair. Is that a proper or a rightful assessment?
It is because it's like you said, dependent state by state, and then judge by judge. You've seen President Trump indicted in other states, and how the judges in those states actually understand the law and aren't letting their political bias or their children's jobs play a part into how everything plays out into their court. So it is a state by state, you know, county by county basis, which it shouldn't be. We should see the same fairness across all states, but at this point, it's you see how things play out in Florida in a red state to how things are playing out in New York, a blue state.
And you obviously don't get the choice. Is it where they decide the crime has taken place? So
Mhm.
you're there under that jurisdiction. Because I hear stories of individuals wanting cases moved to different states, but is that possible?
You can try, but it's once again it's kind of dependent on that state and that court system or judicial system within that state. So you can try for a change of location for a trial, but it's not always as easy as it seems. And President Trump in New York tried for a change of venue, which is actually what it's called, but that was denied by the judge, who it seems like had a vested interest in making sure that this case stayed in his jurisdiction.
Well, I saw a I don't know what you see so many videos, but it was Garland being questioned by, and I can't remember what senator congressman it was, but he was being asked questions about why this judge was put in place, and it does seem as though the U.S. system is more politicized than the UK. The UK is very much just a career system. You kind of push up, and it seems to be less political nominee, where the US seems to have a strong political connection to the legal system. Is that a fair assessment?
I would say yes. It depends on where. In my opinion, it depends on where within the legal system. So, some people assume that a judge at a local level, if some judges get voted into office, some get appointed. So it kind of depends on, what level. Like here in Florida, I actually met one of the ladies that's running for judge of a certain county. You get voted in. Now you have other judges depending where within the legal system that are appointed into their positions. So it just depends, and that's where you see more of, and it shouldn't be this way, but more of a political bias. And being a judge, you should be unbiased.
You should, in a perfect world.
Mhm.
Um, there have been some other high profile. I know that your dad's case is ongoing, and you probably can't discuss that. But then we've also seen Peter Navarro being locked away. Maybe they've decided the state has decided he is a threat. I'm not sure what threat he is, apart from his intelligence and ability to understand the system and put forward a message. He doesn't seem to be a physical threat necessarily, but I mean, maybe touch note, because those are other examples. You kind of go lower down, you've got President Trump, but the state seems to be going after everyone who's been associated, who's supported President Trump. And it does seem to be an effort, I guess, to knock out the opposition just months away from presidential election.
So it is the left trying to silence those that are speaking the truth, starting with President Trump and working their way down to those that have been very vocal about speaking the truth, such as my father and Peter Navarro. Like you said, I can't really discuss my dad's case as it is ongoing. However, it is clear that the left is trying to silence my dad and Peter Navarro by going after them, and they won't be silenced. Peter has been writing op-eds while he is serving time, and I want to let your audience know he is in a prison where he is the only one that has committed a misdemeanor.
Wow.
So he is such a threat to the left that they want to force him behind bars for 4 months for speaking the truth for misdemeanors. So they think that they're going to silence those that they do this to. They're only helping the MAGA movement grow because President Trump, my dad, Peter, will not stop fighting for the truth, will not stop speaking out, against the lies that the left continue to push. So they think that they're going to destroy this movement. They're only helping this movement grow. We saw after President Trump, after the jury found him guilty of those 34 charges, we saw record numbers of donations come in for him. People on social media saying that they had never voted for President Trump, would never vote for President Trump, and are seeing what the left is doing, using the weaponization of the justice system, of, the different levels of the judicial system against him. They're like, this isn't right. I didn't think that this man was speaking the truth before, but clearly he's saying something that they are trying to prevent from getting out, the truth from getting out. So, a lot of people are like, maybe he is speaking the truth. Maybe I will vote for this man that they continue to attack and go after.
Yeah, and we've had Peter Navarro on before, and his phenomenal book, "What Taking Back Trump's America," is a fascinating insight into
Mhm.
what actually happened under the Trump administration. But it has been phenomenal watching those numbers. I saw Jason Miller get interviewed and said, yeah, the 50 odd million, and 30 or 40% of those were individuals who'd never given before. And the more the left do, the more President Trump's base seems to be galvanized and strengthened. And I mean, as an American, it must fill you with hope, because people are seeing through the BS. They're realizing actually this is not the case. We see this for what it is, which is what we expect in a banana republic, but we're seeing it here. So, I mean, that must fill you with confidence as a US citizen.
It does. At the same time, it's like, I wish a lot of these people had seen what we were saying from the beginning. But if it took this, these 34 guilty charges or verdict, then I'm grateful that more people have opened their eyes. I wish they had opened them sooner, that what we're saying all along was actually the truth, that they were going after people that were trying to speak the truth, trying to call on the lies that the left are pushing, on their agenda, what they're actually trying to do to our military, to the judicial system, to our children, things like that. But if it took this and now their eyes are open, that's something good that came from this horrible thing. However, they need to share this with their friends that are still with their blinders on and their eyes shut, that, y- you know, what we're saying is actually what we have been saying is actually what is going on.
Um, I want to kind of also touch on another area of weaponization, which is the media. And this is now your uh, bread and butter. This is what you live and breathe. And you've got 4 hours a day, and then all the prep for that. So I don't envy it all. No way. But tell us about that, because again, when you're outside an industry, you see it one way. So I would see the military one way because I've never served in the military. I always wanted to join the RAF, and it went through Air Training Corps and University Air Squadron, and that's what I wanted to do. But 9/11 put an end to that. But then I can't speak as someone who's been in the military, and my perception is different. And the same with the media. But you've now got a unique perspective inside that media machine and understanding how it works. So maybe give us your thoughts on how the media have been weaponized against the American people.
Well, as we see mainstream media, you know, gov- government officials, their agenda that they are pushing out, certain mainstream media channels are using their platforms to help push this agenda. And we've seen that during this regime, CNN, MSNBC attacking people that did not agree with what was being put out about COVID-19, calling question about the science, which we've now seen that Mr. Anthony Fauci was lying about. I agree with MTG. He doesn't deserve to be called doctor. He made up the science. He had no scientific basis for masking or muzzling kids, putting masks on adults. He didn't even feel that he needed to wear a mask part of the time. He did it for show. The fact that occurred and mainstream media ran with it and tried to make anyone that spoke out against it a conspiracy theorist, spreading misinformation, trying to tell the American people that they were crazy or didn't trust the science and didn't deserve to have their fundamental rights because they didn't believe what they were pushing. I think every American should be upset, should be pissed off that these platforms continue to push that and are standing by that decision to do it and caused so much harm and risk to Americans.
Tell us about the alternative media that has really flourished, and you've been a part of an exciting acceleration in the war room, and really planting the flag for what it means to be an American and a patriot and someone who loves freedom. Uh, tell us about that, because it's one of the big silver linings that we have seen in the dark cloud of Biden, that we have seen the fight back and the rise of alternative media. And whatever happens in the mainstream media, you've got this voice of truth that
Mhm.
directly connects with the people.
So I think that because mainstream media was pushing the narrative that the left and the regime wanted everyone to hear, you saw a rise, like you said, in alternative media. In case Real America's Voice, which the War Room is on, um, we are on 4 hours a day, as you touched on, um, from 10 to 12 Eastern Standard Time, and then 5 to 6 on Real America's Voice, and 6 to 7 p.m. on Lindell TV. However, you saw this rise in alternative media because the truth needed to get out. Mainstream media was not putting that truth out. Fox News, despite it being considered a conservative news network, the Murdochs are not conservative. They want to push a liberal agenda. So you have hosts, not all of them, but a majority of the hosts pushing an establishment, left leaning um branding or like news that
Yeah.
they want to get out there. And that's why Real America's Voice is so great because they allow War Room to get the truth out. We've had our posse grow by significant numbers ever since War Room started. And it started with War Room impeachment back in 19 and then War Room pandemic in 2020 and now it's War Room. But you've just seen numbers grow because people want truth and they're not getting that from mainstream media. And I've been stopped so many times since I moved. Actually, I got stopped a few times in my old state, and people would be like, you look an awful lot like Steve Bannon or
Yeah.
Steve Bannon's daughter. And then they look at me and they're like, I love Steve. I love War Room. Like, I don't know what I would do if I didn't have War Room because and I mean, people have said that to me here in Florida, but it's a lot of the time it's I don't know what I would do because mainstream media is not putting the truth out and your dad is not afraid of them and he's willing to fight for this country and get the truth out. So I think that it takes, people, great patriots that aren't afraid to be told that they're crazy, that they're conspiracy theorists, that they're spreading misinformation because they're actually getting the truth out. And that's why I'm grateful that War Room is on Real America's Voice, that Real America's Voice has many other great hosts that aren't afraid and willing to fight.
But I think you're just finish off. Your dad's fairly unique. I mean, the only other person kind of on a similar level of what they're doing as an individual is probably Alex Jones, because others have built a network, and you talk about those networks, the RAVs and Lindell TV. Um, but yeah, what I mean, the name Steve Bannon is synonymous with the rise of that MAGA movement, not only but also of the media. And it's an interesting mix of him personally, but also connecting with those other networks. And um, it's I think something unique because most people they fall in and be part of a network, and they're one of many hosts. But actually, to have an individual who does his own thing, but also connects with those other platforms, I think is fairly unique. And I think that's what makes what you're doing there in War Room intriguing and has turbocharged it. That kind of mix between corporate identity and individual personality.
I agree. And I think that, a lot of shows focus on one area or one avenue. And on War Room, we tie in.
Everything.
Yeah. So we have, you know, economics, we have local politics, we have different local being, you know, local down to school board or something within a county. We also have state level, we have, federal level. So it's not just one different avenue, it's all across and have different people coming on talking about ways to get involved. So it's not just someone talking at you, it's someone that's telling you a way to get involved or how you can do something at the different levels. And then I think also with our live streams too, because not only are we on 4 hours a day, but we also do live streams throughout the week of different guests from the show, but also different people within our show. So, like Grace, myself, and JoJo, we did a live stream on the Force Multiplier Alliance and how you can start to get involved. And we've also done live streams where we've done a roundup of like things that have occurred. We've done live streams. We did it in 22 where we live streamed different debates that were going on that people had no idea that this debate was going on in their state for their um, federal level, for their c- Congress, their congressional seat that was happening. And the local station wasn't, putting it out very well that this debate was going on. So not only did the entire country get to see the debate, but those within that district that had no idea that the debate was going on. So we did that back in 22, and then Grace, myself, and Calamity Jane would come on and give our commentary on how we thought the debate went. But just things like that we're getting information out there. So I think that's a great thing about WarRoom, is that while it's on air 4 hours a day, the information coming from WarRoom spans, throughout the day and across different channels, networks, and not even staying within the United States. Like, we have posse members over in Europe, over New Zealand, Australia, other countries as well. But those are the ones that I know, New Zealand and Australia, because they usually come into our live chat.
No, it is. I think one of the things I've noticed, that when you meet different people in media, and there are those people who get a script and they look good and they can read what's in front of them. But actually, I think I had the interesting insight and privilege whenever one time I went over and Liz Truss, British Prime Minister, resigned that evening. And I get a text from Steve saying, "Can you come in the studio tomorrow? Liz Truss has just resigned. We need you all morning." And just to witness that interaction and that level of understanding, I think, of the issues, because you kind of see often usually as people who just read stuff, but actually the amount of stuff that you cover in WarRoom and the grasp of the issues that Steve has, or when Natalie's on, or when Jack's guest hosting, or so many others. To me, that also sets it apart. And it's great to have someone who's presenting the information, has an understanding of the information, and they're not just reading it out blankly.
Oh, I agree. And I think that's a great thing that WarRoom has. It's not just one host that understands the issues. Like you said, Natalie, Jack, other hosts that we've had, they understand the issue and grasp, the reach that it has. And while we have many great hosts, like, maybe I'm just a little biased because he's my dad, but he's the smartest man I know. You could ask him any subject and he could tell you information that you had no idea about that subject. So I believe the man's a genius, and I stand by what I say. I love just talking about, a broad range of topics with him, because I always learn something new that I did not know.
And I think that is what makes WarRoom unique. Everyone, when they tune in, you come away thinking, I've learned something. And it's not just the run of the mill, focusing on one or two stories, but it is bang, 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 and you come away. Maureen, I really do appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for giving us your time with some of your experiences back in the military, and touching on those aspects of our institutions. Certainly the legal system, and then also the media that have been massively politicized and weaponized against us. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me on, Peter, and I hope to come on again.
Oh, you can come on anytime, you know that. And of course, the viewers, listeners, make sure and follow at Maureen_Bannon on Twitter.
And I come in kind of spicy on my Twitter sometimes. Some days I take a break, and then other days it's like, 4 or 5 tweets that are all pretty spicy.
Well, we should rate you to see who's spicier, you or Grace.
I think Grace wins that hands down. I think she's spicier. Yeah. I did have a tweet that I had sent her. I did not end up posting the tweet, but she told me it was a little too spicy. And when Grace tells me it's a little too spicy, I was like, okay, I better not post this.
I will take that 100%. But Maureen, thank you so much for being with us today.